Hi, it's Michael and David here, presenting Small Business Banter. A healthy micro and small business sector means a successful economy and a more vibrant society. Small Business Banter is about helping regional business owners better prepare for the current challenges and also for the next stage of business success. I'm Michael Kerr, founder of Kerr Capital, advisors to business owners. Each week with David Gregory, CEO of the Small Business Mentoring Service, we'll interview a different small business expert or a fellow business owner and operator. And they're going to share their best tips and insights for you, the listener. Small Business Banter is brought to you from the studios of 104.7 Gippsland FM and heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network. Thanks also to our supporters, Kerr Capital and the Small Business Mentoring Service. COVID-19's had a massive impact on a lot of people and a lot of businesses. One of the things we want to talk about on Small Business Banter is those entrepreneurs and business people that have managed to recover and set themselves up for success. So what do you do when you're hit by COVID-19 so heavily as they were in the craft brewing industry? James Grugeon's business, The Good Beer Co., was heavily impacted by COVID-19. The Good Beer Company was teetering, and he had to find a new way to find customers and success and set himself up. So in today's episode, we're going to hear all about what James did to set his business up to both survive and thrive. Here's James. So welcome, James Grugeon from The Good Beer Co. We appreciate you coming on to the show today, James. For everyone listening in, could you just give us just a minute or two about your background as an entrepreneur and business person to get us started?
Well, as you can tell from my accent, I'm not originally from Australia. I've lived here for about 10 years. My wife, Jo, and I are Australian citizens now. We originally moved over to Melbourne, where I joined some friends and colleagues from an Australian business that I ran the UK arm of in London to have my first crack at starting a social enterprise business, which we ended up kind of morphing into our relationship with our first client, which was a company called Power Shop in Melbourne. And I guess I have been running the Good Beer Co. for the last 4 years here in Brisbane, having moved here to support my wife Jo for taking a great job here. But my background really is I've worked as a director of communications and corporate affairs in some big companies back in the UK. I ran an environmental charity for a couple of years before I came out here, and I'm someone that I guess has had a fairly long career in corporate communications, corporate social responsibility, sustainability, action on climate change. And I've worked in not-for-profits, I've worked in big companies, I've worked in startups, I've worked in social enterprises. And I've during that period of time, I guess, learned how to build partnerships between those organizations. And I'm really passionate about the role that business, and particularly businesses that are set up to do good, like social enterprises or B Corps and purpose-led businesses, can play in our society, and in particular in tackling really thorny challenges that we all face, like the climate crisis, for example.
That's fantastic, James. I'm always inspired by businesses that have the courage to just get out there and give it a decent crack, and in particular those that have that social enterprise bent. So, what led you to say, I want to create a beer company that does good?
Oh, look, to be honest with you, I'm a massive fan of beer and craft beer. And, and Australia has some absolutely brilliant independent craft breweries. I think we're nudging kind of 900 across the country now, which when I first moved here nearly 10 years ago It was nothing like that number. And I'd been working with a company called Power Shop in Melbourne, who were launching on the Australian market as a new electricity retailer, and realized that as a company that was backed by wind farms and had a very strong position on the support for renewable energy, that it was a company that ought to be having a conversation with people who wanted to show their support as consumers for renewable energy. So we partnered with a number of different environmental organizations to get that company its first 50,000 customers, and in doing so raised money for some really good causes that were about promoting renewable energy and tackling climate change.
There's a lot of great causes that need that business and social focus to get resolved.
That's right. And so, but in doing that, my wife got a job in Brisbane, and I was thinking, well, what am I going to do? Being based working for a company in Melbourne, and I thought, well, if you could do something with consumers with a product that's as boring as electricity, surely you could do it with beer. And at the time, I didn't, I wasn't aware of anybody else in Australia doing what the Good Beer Co does, which is simply having a beer product that helps fund and support good causes. And so went ahead and set it up, and the rest is kind of history. I guess that was 4 years ago.
So as at today, though, you've had to really pivot your business, haven't you? Because it's been a challenging time for you, for the industry, and right across the economy. So, can you just take us through? You've got you've set the business up. We're looking at international expansion, but that's all sort of you've had to change direction just in the last couple of months. Can you talk us through what you've done to adapt and survive and hopefully thrive into the future?
Look, I mean, in common with most people who are running businesses at the moment, whether that's in Australia or in the UK, which is where we were looking to launch and are still looking to launch, it's been a challenging time, and in particular for independent craft beer companies or people in that hospitality, food and beverage space, because social distancing rules have closed tap rooms, breweries, bars, and closed down a number of the places where beers will be sold. So that in and of itself is challenging. We were due to launch the Good Beer Co, a fantastic nationwide event called the Great Get Together, which last year attracted over 3 million people at 35,000 plus its local community events across the UK just last weekend. And obviously that event hasn't gone ahead as planned. And with international borders closed, my last trip to the UK was in February. I've been locked down in Australia. So we haven't launched our product in the UK. That's on ice. And here in Australia, we have paused brewing our beer, and we don't have a product in the market. But during that period of time, I decided that it would be worth doing something to support both the independent craft beer industry. That was also a really good fit with our model. And I noticed that, we had a lot of people out there as essential workers, our nurses, our ambos, our police, our firefighters, our supermarket workers, our aged care workers, teachers, who were doing an amazing job while we were all locked down, going out and putting themselves at risk and putting their families at risk to look after us and take care of us and keep the country going. So we thought, well, why don't we do a campaign to give each of them a 4-pack of local craft beers? And I signed up 8 breweries across the country. And we to date have raised about $52,000 to gift 2,500 of 10,000 workers who signed up through our campaign a beer. And we're just about to put a case of 16 independent craft breweries beers under that campaign brand into Dan Murphy's and BWS across Australia, which
that's outstanding.
Hopefully will mean that we can gift 10,000 essential workers a 4-pack to say thank you, which is kind of the most Australian way you can thank people, I think.
Yeah,
so that's our pivot.
And with James, with the campaign you talk about, what does that actually look? For somebody listening, what does that mean? How does that manifest? And how does the beer go from a brewer to a frontline worker? Just to the basics of that.
So basically, what we did was we had a sign-up form on the Good Beer Co. website where workers could give us verification that they were an essential worker, so that could be a work email or a payslip. And then they would go onto a database, and we told them that we would only take 10,000. And it was amazing how quickly they signed up.
They were thirsty.
Yeah, they were, and we told them it was first come first serve, so they would only get a beer if there was a donation. Bearing in mind that these are craft breweries that were already doing it tough and had lost about 80% of their turnover because they'd closed their breweries and tap rooms. As the donations came in, we were able to fulfill those orders. So we had email addresses, phone numbers, and delivery addresses for those people. And the beers were dispatched directly as 4-packs from each of our 8 brewery partners. So we had a brewery partner. So we had Newstead in Brisbane, Modus Operandi in Sydney, Stomping Ground in Melbourne, Spark in Adelaide, and so on.
What a fantastic initiative, James. That's just brilliant, because we all want to reach out to the essential workers and thank them for all that they're doing. I know in looking through your profile and having a bit of a chat before that you've also gone down a very interesting path. When there's Australia is all about the beer, and as you say, about 900 odd brewers, and you've introduced a product called Sober Beer. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, Sober's not our product as the Good Beer Co., but they're one of our partners for the Good Beer Always Helps campaign. And they're a fantastic organisation based on the Gold Coast, run by Clinton and his wife Lozan, who are the first Aboriginal run and led business, but they're also Australia's first non-alcoholic craft beer. And I don't know if you remember what non-alcoholic beer used to be like. It used to be terrible.
Tasted it once, James.
Yeah, the one that I always remember is Caliber. By Billy Connolly in the UK. And it was like drinking paint stripper. This stuff is absolutely delicious, and it's really outstanding as a product. And with Dry July coming up, perfect. But they use indigenous ingredients as well. And they're a social enterprise that supports projects on Indigenous health. More importantly, they're also trying to have a conversation with Australia about alcohol, and thinking about how we drink. And that's something that that was always part of my thinking with the Good Beer Co. Craft beer has been a really good influence on the beer market in general in Australia, in the sense that people are drinking it for pleasure. And so you're almost seeing people drinking beer like they drink fine wine, so you're kind of enjoying the flavour, you're enjoying the taste, you're enjoying knowing where the ingredients come from.
And good company.
And good company as well.
We're talking to James Grugeon from Good Beer Co. James, what we're hearing just in that last 5 minutes or so is the importance for you as a business in having relationships right through your industry, and also, I guess, for you personally, a continual focus on innovation and finding new markets. So can you talk us through your approach to developing those relationships and continually innovating just to survive, so that other owners can take some inspiration from what you do?
Oh, look, I think one of the advantages alongside the struggle of bootstrapping a small business and a startup yourself, and in my case, completely on my own because I'm the sole founder, is that you can move quickly and you can do things that would take longer for bigger companies to do. And so one example of that for us is our Great Barrier Beer for the Australian Marine Conservation Society. So we were one of the first in Australia, I think maybe even the first, to use biodegradable, marine life friendly 6-pack holders. And because we were able to do that and then put that product into BWS and Dan Murphy's, we were able to work with BioPack, the Australian manufacturers of that product, to get other breweries on board, and also start having conversations with people like Endeavour Drinks Group who make their own brand drinks for Woolworths. And I think, that's a responsibility of any sort of socially motivated, purpose-led business, particularly as a startup. It's one of the really exciting things that you can do, which is you can do stuff that's innovative that hopefully has an influence on the bigger players, so that the products like those biodegradable packaging alternatives to plastic which of course we don't want to see ending up in the ocean, particularly not when it's a beer for ocean conservation. You can help to stick a rocket under those businesses and those products as well.
Yeah,
and you can be part of leading change, which is exciting, but it's also a really good fit.
Yeah, that's fantastic
with your product as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic, James. It also inspires others to follow along a path that you've led the way. Going forward, what does tomorrow look like for you? So what's your plans for the next year, the next 5 years? What's your ambitions within the space?
Look, I think we're still in the getting up off the floor from COVID-19. If I'm honest, it would be absolutely wrong to say that the pandemic has been the only reason that we've had problems as a business. We're still even 4 years in that startup phase, in the sense that we're at the stage now where we need investment in order to be able to grow. So what we have is a proven ability to be able to create award-winning and popular products that sell well. And we've proved the concept, I think, of a social enterprise beer or a good beer that does good. We've done some really exciting stuff and innovative stuff around packaging and the environment and sustainability. So what we're doing right now is having conversations with potential investors about how we scale the business, because I'm no longer able to fund that myself, and it's got to the stage now where it needs some significant investment in its marketing, but also in terms of building a team.
Yeah, to bring it to fruition, James.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think what we've got is a really strong proof of concept. We've had 5 really strong products in the market. We've got this opportunity now in the UK to launch there with a really well-established charity and brewery partners, and strong interest from retailers as well. So we're in a good place. But like everyone else, we're getting ready to be able to move. And even things like the international borders being closed, while it doesn't prevent conversations, face to face is actually really important, particularly when you're trying to talk to investors.
Yeah,
and you can't do everything on Zoom, can you?
They want to look you in the eye, not through a camera. Yeah. Hey,
absolutely,
James. That unfortunately we're just at the end of our time with you today. It's been great to talk to someone who's living and breathing their business, but also who is clearly shaking up things across the sector, reaching out, creating great relationships within the industry, clearly communicating to customers what you do and why you do it. So we congratulate you on what you've done and wish you well in the next phase. We've been talking to James Grugeon from Good Beer Co. James, all the best with the next phase of your business, and stay strong.
Thanks for having me on, and all the best.
Cheers, James. So, David, that was a terrific chat with James Grugeon from the Good Beer Co. He's an inspirational fella. He's been through a lot the last little while, hasn't he?
He certainly has. And isn't it inspiring when you hear a story about somebody who 4 years ago they backed themselves? So many other people, they're tentative about the opportunities. He backed himself, he funded himself, and off he went. And from there he had to push on through and to find a way that he could bring his products to market.
Yeah, that was the tenacity, I think, is a good word. It's one of the takeaways I had from talking to James, and just that. I think there was quite a few takeaways, but first and foremost was sticking at it and believing. What about you?
Yeah, for me, one of the things that I took away from it is that he looked at new ways to get into the market. So rather than just saying, I have a beer product and that's who I am and what I do, he looked at it and said, is there a way that I can establish a campaign where I can do something through Dan Murphy's, whether I can do something that is socially responsible, whether I can develop new innovations like the ring pull components
packaging.
Yeah, because that's such an important thing to do, and it's something that inspires others to follow those same footsteps.
David, one of the things that struck me particularly about James was as an entrepreneur, he came from what you might call a corporate or a big business background. And so he's able to draw on a lot of different experiences, both in the UK and Australia, across the power industry, and I can't remember the other. There was a couple of other industries, I think, an agency that he worked in. And so, I'd think that for others considering going into business, don't forget all that prior experience is really important.
Yeah, I think also that people often think about the fact that they don't know what they don't know when they're going into business, but they never think they don't know what they do know, that they've had a wealth of experience over many years and possibly over many careers, and each of those careers will bring to the table a skill set that they probably didn't even know that they had. And I look at James and I think, wow, he from his diversity of background, he's now utilising the relationships that he's built, he's utilising the skill sets, and he's challenging himself to try and find a new way, a new pathway.
Yeah, look, and one of the things that, or the thing that ties it all together, I think also is he's got a very clear direction and purpose about why he's doing what he's doing, and it shines through, and it's in and of itself probably not enough to sustain a business, but in his case you couple that with his broad experience, and he's been involved in some really big businesses and big corporates, but also he's self-funded his own business. So yeah, if you're considering going into business, and this show's about small business owners, so we like to think that there are people listening in who are inspired or are thinking about going into business. So draw from James that those other skills are all part of what might be the mix you need to be successful in your own small business.
Absolutely. We're really proud of these small businesses, aren't we? You look at the amount of people that have had the courage to go out there and start something that didn't exist before. It's just inspirational.
I also thought it was very evident that he's worked closely within his industry. In the craft beer industry, like a lot, have been heavily impacted. So, he wasn't backward in coming forward to help support other craft breweries across the country to help support his business. And I think in a couple of the other episodes of Small Business Banter, we've actively encouraged business owners to look outwards and within your supply chain or within your local area to start to talk to other businesses. And he's done that extremely well and for the right reasons.
In spades. And I also love the fact that James looked at his business and said, I don't just want to start a business, I want something with a social conscience, that I want something that brings in involvement from the Indigenous community, or that reflects on our essential workers and giving back to that sector. And it's a very easy thing to do to just open up a business with a commercial outlook, but it's a lot harder when you're tying in some of these social components. But how valuable is that?
Yeah, look, I think it from James's point of view, and I've certainly met quite a lot of social entrepreneurs that have got for-purpose businesses, and the drive for them and the motivation they get of connecting the business outcomes with the social outcome is quite powerful, and I think it can sustain them through particularly tough times, and he's been through some. He also seemed to. We were chatting with him off air, and he had a lot of hope, even amongst the challenging times. But he sees a lot of innovative businesses around the country in craft brewing, but in other industries and businesses he comes across. So he's got an international focus. Unfortunately, he was planning an international alliance himself, and he's had to shelve that. But he did seem to be very buoyant about the opportunities for Australian businesses.
Yeah, and I think that's also born of a unique element, and it's something that we've discussed on a number of our programs, and that is the desire to collaboratively work with others within the industry. We talked recently about the whole strip of car yards in the one
golden
street,
mile of cars.
The golden mile of cars. Well, in his case, he's talking to other brewers and working collaboratively rather than seeing them as opposition, seeing them as an opportunity to partner.
Yeah, you get a sense that what goes around comes around with James, and we look forward to hearing more about his business as it diversifies and If you're listening back in, I'm sure you are, James. Good luck, mate. We enjoyed the chat. Yes, an awful lot has happened in the short time since we recorded that interview with James Grugeon from Good Beer Co. I rang him today just to see how the campaign to gift a 4-pack of craft beer to essential workers was going. The great news is that he is now, through Good Beer Co., in 1,000 Dan Murphys and BWSs across the country. So he's very confident that they're well on their way to donating their target of 10,000 packs to essential workers. So it's very pleasing to hear. And in another positive take in that quick follow-up chat with James, he was, in our incredibly challenging times, he was seeing an increase in an acceptance of collaboration between these breweries, craft breweries, which have historically been competitors in craft brewing. With things so dire, they just saw banding together as getting a lot more exposure for them all collectively that they wouldn't do individually in trying to reach that mass audience that Dan's and BWS brings. So good work, James. And on that same theme, I just wanted to flag that in a future episode, we're going to be chatting with Joe Lyons, who recently brought together 7 separate social enterprises under the Gippsland Social Enterprise Collective banner. Joe's an experienced business and social entrepreneur, and she sees a lot of upside in those 7 collaborating more formally, and we're looking forward to that real soon. So that's all for today's episode of Small Business Banter. David and I continue to be inspired by bringing you small business experts and hearing your stories. For any of the links, resources or information we've talked about on the show today, or to contact David or I, please head over to smallbusinessbanter.com. And David and I would love you to tune in at the same time next week for another episode of Small Business Banter.